Imagine a perfect world where you can build a restaurant, open the doors, and make loads of money. Unfortunately, those days are over. It takes great leadership, hard work, and long hours to operate a successful restaurant. Together, we can make it happen. This is Restaurantopia.
All right, welcome to another exciting episode of Restaurantopia. We're here with our COVID-19 series again, talking about things that matter in these urgent times to help restaurants continue to operate, to reopen, which will be our topic today, and to thrive as we get through this. So just, obviously we got the normal crew here, Brian Seitz and Anthony Hamilton, and myself, Dave Ross, and we're going to get into some stuff today on reopening your restaurant. It's kind of, it's a little, we're in the Ohio market, and, we're still waiting for our governor to decide when that's going to happen. But, I think it's still good to start talking about what it's going to look like, what it should look like, and for what we know now, what we should be doing to get things going. So Anthony's created an unbelievable reopening playbook that we'll be sharing in the a link in the show notes. So definitely check that out, and we're going to get rolling. So Anthony,
Thanks,
what do you got, buddy?
Yeah, I got a lot, man. I appreciate the introduction. It was very sound. Hopefully I can live up to those expectations. Listen, first and foremost, the more I dive into this thing is the more my heart goes out to these operators. And you mentioned the governor early. So as a citizen, on one hand, I'm so relieved that we're doing things slowly, pensively, and cautiously. And then as a business person, on the other hand, I can't imagine what that pool is like, needing to get open, needing to get things moving again and just get back to what we call normal. I don't know where that tug of war ends and where that tug of war begins. And Brian, I know you have some affiliations with some restaurants and close to some operators. How are they dealing with that emotional roller coaster, that tug of war, that push and pull that people are going through right now?
It's the uncertainty that is killing them. I'm not here to get political or to judge Governor DeWine as Dave said, that we're in the Ohio market, but not having a plan is hurting people just because of the uncertainty. People don't know what to do. Do I have time? I got takeout for lunch today, and I did a curbside pickup. I went in and say hello to the operator. He was renovating his restaurant in the front of the house, which was great. But, do you have another 20 days for renovations, or do you not? There's no plan in place. So this whole inability to convey a timeline to the public, to me, is ridiculous. And we really need to get on board with figuring out what does the future look like. And that may come down tomorrow, but it's still, in my opinion, 15, 20 days too late.
Yeah.
Well, and even if it does, my feelings are give us the date. Is it June 1st? Is it July 1st? Just let us know. And again, hopefully we're not going to be frustrated through this episode, but some of us are getting this out. Let us know what it's going to be, even if it is a little more cautious and long, but then at least we can start planning. And, please, we'll send this episode to Governor DeWine so he can hear our perspectives from his constituents.
I don't want anyone to get sick. I don't want anyone to be hurt, but we do need to know a plan. I mean, I can go pick up Old Navy, sweatpants, but I can't know when one of my friends are going to be able to open up their restaurant. That's ridiculous. And this whole thing where they're allowed to do takeout or, curbside delivery, that's a cure-all. It's not. I mean, people are suffering and they need to step up to the plate and provide some sort of guidance and direction. And I'm not saying open up 100% tomorrow. I just need to know a timeline and how people can prepare.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I think the finiteness of an opening date is all we need. Dave, whether it's a month, 2 months, and I know that's not music to anybody's ears, but having that solidified date to know that you can work towards, to paint the full picture of what you're up against. Because right now there's no end in sight. There's no beginning in sight. It's tough. I mean, I can't imagine. So anyway, in this playbook that you mentioned, Dave, put together a list of prep work that you can do. And we talked about this, and a lot of publications have circulated around talking about the prep work. I don't want to spend a ton of time on that just because it's kind of what you should have already been doing, but it's not too late if you haven't been. So it's worth mentioning. I want to develop a channel to communicate with my staff first and foremost. Keeping staff engaged is so important. And if you go to the support sites where these staff are communicating and congregating, you'll find there's uncertainty with them just as there is with the operators. I mean, it's just a sea of uncertainty. So I would, as an operator, I would want to keep communicating with my staff to A, make them feel good, and B, increase the chances they're going to come back and work when they get the opportunity, Same goes for my customer base. I'm definitely keeping in touch with them, letting them know what's going on. And I'm painting a picture of what I'm doing to improve my space. Are you guys familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Have you guys ever heard of that before, or studied it maybe like freshman year of college or high school? You guys remember that at all?
Sounds super familiar. No, I think once you explain it, I'll remember, but yeah.
Well, so Maslow, he determined that people first, they seek out physiological needs. So like air, water, warmth, things like that. And then the next is like safety needs. And that's just making sure you're free from predators and blah, blah, blah. And then all the way at the top is like self-actualization. So you have this hierarchy, these things that you need in place. And a lot of theorists are suggesting that hierarchy, instead of self-actualization where we're at now, where people are going out for image and going out for status and things like that, we're reverting back down to the first couple, to the physiological needs and the safety needs. And I think that's fascinating, because I happen to agree with it wholeheartedly. And I've mentioned before in these, is the marketing employer, the engagement with your customer base should be focused around those two first mechanisms, that hierarchy. Express to your customer base that you're going to give them the physiological needs that they need and the safety that they need first. The quality of food and service is now a distant second to those two things, in my opinion. And I think that's a fascinating switch of the paradigm that we've had, because it's always been about, hey, look at my food, it's amazing. Now it's going to be, hey, look at my tables, they're so clean. Or hey, look at my staff, they're all wearing masks. Or hey, look at this reasonable care we're taking to make sure we're not sick. I think that's becoming uber important. And while you're engaging with your customers, it's going to be evident what's important to them. And then you should be able to riff and play off of them. Moving on down the line, talking about fulfilling inventory needs. I wouldn't wait for logjam and distribution. I understand some distributors are up and running now and distributing to a lot of customers. But at the same time, when they drop the open date or have a plan in place, as well as I do, the products are going to get bottlenecked. And no matter how good distributors do, there's going to be some snags there, where every restaurant's trying to fill their dry stock or fill their bar as soon as they can. Me personally, I would fill it as soon as I could, and I would work with my distributors to get those shelves full. Go ahead, Brian.
Anthony, I love that. I would fulfill it with your, not necessarily forgivable, but with your cash flow from the PPP money. And the reason I say that is our team here at Hillcrest does an amazing job purchasing, but we can't help with what Tyson's doing or a meat packing plant somewhere, across the United States. So to get these things moving and to make sure that you have everything and that you're ready, you want to be communicating with your vendors, and you want to be constantly talking to your sales rep. This is what I'm planning to do. This is what my new menu looks like. And then getting feedback from them, because you're going to want to know, like, hey, is this popular with the takeout, and what does it look like? Because there's still going to be a large component of takeout to your menu, even if you're open at 25, 50, 75%, whatever that new normal looks like from the governor, you want to know.
Yeah, I agree. And I think your distributor is maybe like your secret weapon consultant that not many people utilize enough. And I think now's the time to lean on them. The guys and gals that you speak with now, whether they're reps or managers or whatever the case may be, even drivers, they know what's going on in the industry. They see it every day. They're out there every day. I would lean in on for information and insight. What are the industry leaders doing? What can I pattern, or what should I not be doing? So on and so forth. So yeah, all right in line with what you were saying there.
Yeah, and what's your menu going to look like based on the supply chain? Because this is a real thing. Like we're going to get to that. We're going to have a dicey 2, 3, 4, 6 weeks potentially of beef and chicken, and there's things we're seeing it now. And again, this is kind of the timeliness of these episodes that we're doing right now. That some of this stuff, when you listen to this in 6 months, you're going to be fast forwarding because it doesn't make a difference. But right now, if you're listening to this when this drops, like, you got to be talking and communicating, because these distributors, including us, who do a world-class job of servicing, we're going to need communication.
Yeah, we'll get to that menu piece down here in a few minutes, Dave, and thanks for bringing that up, because it's imperative that you re-gear a little bit. Things are not the same as they used to be, but I digress. Next up on my checklist, obviously the cleaning and sanitation things, fellas. We've talked about this ad nauseum. I gave a little bullet point list of some maybe things that weren't so obvious there. And do understand the generation of this list, and I should have kind of led the show with this. I didn't come up with this list. This is an aggregate of all my research, of all the top people in the industry that are putting together lists and playbooks and things of that nature. I just consolidated all of what I thought was relevant. So, a lot of people smarter than me putting these together. I just reorganized it to feel what would be applicable. Certainly added my 2 cents, but for the most part, this is coming from a lot of different sources, and I found it to be incredibly valuable information.
Anthony, one thing that I was thinking when I was reading this was, should you be doing a training video on how to bust a table? And is it now time to bust out the iPhone and say, all right, this is how the new normal post-COVID-19, we bust a table. And, you can use it for your training videos and post it, on your internal network and however you want to do that. But to be able to have something, so, this is what we do with napkins. This is what we do with cleaning the salt and pepper. This is how we bring a new one to the table, or, doing single serve. I don't know what it's going to look like at your restaurant, but at the end of the day, each busser and each server and every member of your team needs to know this.
Yeah, and what a great way to have content for your social media and your marketing, like, to use for both things. You've got training, and then you've got that same videos content to show people what you're doing to keep them safe, to your point that you said earlier, Anthony. So I love that idea.
Yeah. And look, a wise man once told me early on in my management tenure, he said, just because they should know doesn't mean they do. And so I've kind of taken that onus through life, is because a lot of times we assume people know how to fold a napkin, or they know, well, we just had a pandemic. Shit, you shouldn't put out ketchup. We should use single serve, packets. Well, maybe it's obvious to you, but it's not to everybody. And what's it hurt? I mean, if you can muster the time to do it, your organization is so much better off for that level of training. And I would do soup to nuts from the ground up with everybody, just like I was a grand reopening, just like I was a new restaurant. Because Brian, you're absolutely right, man. There's so much has changed. You might as well take the opportunity. So past that, the cleaning and sanitation thing we talked about, the one thing I'm very adamant about, and I think everybody does this naturally now, is just being in the know. Just understanding that these things change day by day. You've heard me applaud a day by day basis and a day by day mentality, because this is a moving target. I'm still in that ilk, and I haven't left. But I would lean on, and I left a list in the playbook here as I'm looking at it. You can't see it, but I'm looking at it. Ohio Restaurant Association is where I start, just because I think they're most in tune with what's going on at a community level. But you have so many other resources on a national scope too that are feeding into the Ohio Restaurant Association. And then some other companies you wouldn't think about, like restaurantowner.com or even Data Essential, that have been gratuitously putting out free information and free research for people to help them, which I think is awesome, and it's charitable. And do understand a Data Essential or a Technomic, subscription can be in the thousands of dollars per year, and they're just giving you a portion of it for free. Like, here you go, have at it. Take advantage of it, because it's really amazing data out there, really amazing information, just helps you make better decisions down the road. And again, I mentioned tracking the numbers. Make sure you find your favorite COVID tracker, and you can track the what's it called, the curve yourself. Understand the curve's not necessarily symmetrical, but you can get a feeling that we're moving past the peak. So chances of the governor delivering good news at the next press conference may be a little higher. So that way you can be a little more prepared for it. Because
Anthony, I agree with you in part and disagree with you in part. You want
to
watch
this?
Me? I disagree with you.
Yes.
I think you can watch the data points and see what it looks like, but you really need to get back in the game. I think people who are stepped out and are letting their operations lay dormant are not getting those reps in, or not getting that opportunity to be with their staff, or not getting that constant contact with their customer. I mean, it's good to do the social media and to reach out there. It's good to make the phone calls, but there's nothing better than actually doing things. And again, you may not be on a grand scale where you're back to 100% or having the big days you used to on Friday and Saturday night, but to be with your people and to getting reps and getting your A players there and doing the job will help them prepare for people are going to come back, and they're going to come back not just 75, 100%, 150%. Like, people are, in my opinion, they're missing and need that interaction with their fellow human beings.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm going to in turn disagree with you. How's that sound?
Okay. I got to tell you, I agree with you two disagreeing.
Dave, the gloves are coming off, man. You might want to slip in your referee outfit soon. What I'm saying, Brad, is if we look at the precedent from like Wuhan or some of the originations or originated places, maybe Italy, the precedent right now is consumers are still very hesitant in to go out in full force. So yes, on one hand, I think a part of the population is clamoring to get out there, especially the younger, less, maybe sensitive to disease crowd, clamoring to get out there and be social. But I think with Winsight and Technomic put out a figure the other day, it was something like 58% of the 1,000 people they surveyed are still very cautious about going out. And they suspect it's going to be a couple weeks or even a month after they lift the regulations before they venture out. They're going to take a wait and see approach and see how it goes. I'm certainly of that ilk because of, we have a sensitivity and immune system in our household. But
and I understand that, and I agree that there are those people who are not going to, and I don't think they should. I don't think for Mother's Day you should be rushing over to Nana's house and getting her to come to the buffet. Yeah, but what I'm saying is I think you should. I think there will be a rush of people coming back out. I went to last night was Cinco de Mayo. There was over 100 people standing outside of a Mexican restaurant in Broadview Heights, Ohio. So
no kidding.
To me, yeah, that was telling me, and there's 3 cop cars directing traffic and everyone's ready to get tacos and their burritos. And it was a beautiful thing. They're all social distancing, but there's still 100 people out there ready to attack a local independent restaurant.
Attack in the most positive of ways.
Get some takeout. So I think that's impressive.
Oh, no, I don't disagree. And understand the data from these companies is a national level. So I think you might be dealing with one of the lapses in things. Ohio's different than Michigan, is different than New York, right? So that may play into a little bit. But I guess we'll see.
I think it's going to be different on a city by city level. Because I think you're going to see hot spots. I think you're going to see aging populations in one city. And then I think you're going to see it by concept. Different concepts are going to be different.
I was just going to say that yeah, the higher you get to the higher end establishments, that you're going to see a slower rate of acceptance to dining in. And you know, that's a reality that those types of concepts and operators are going to have to either deal with or adjust to.
Yeah. And I don't envy their position because, again, you know, taking that, thankfully with the independents, they can pivot quickly because you're going to need to pivot and evolve as time goes on. Things are changing rapidly, as everybody knows. And the quicker you can pivot, the quicker you can evolve, the longer you're going to survive. No question about that. So anyway, go ahead.
The ability to pivot's great too, but the ability to sustain, and I may be beating a dead horse here, but to get back to my point of staying in the game, I think is so important because I think you're going to see the national chains that had a bad concept and bad food that are not going to be able to sustain this. You're already seeing some of them close close permanently. So yeah. I think it's a real opportunity for a local independent operator who has a great concept, who has a great community, and is really providing something to his customer base unique and a value that they're going to win.
I would argue the community would rally around that person rather than a chain, or at least I would hope, right?
Yeah, no, I agree.
All right. Well, the meat of this discussion really comes in the next 2 topics, guys, and that's the facilities and the policies. And that's right in line with what we're talking about, the evolution of what you need to do from a restaurant standpoint. It's not going to be easy. And thankfully, we have a lot of technology in place to help with things like, you know, as far as your reservation system, because we all agree that I don't think they're going to open it up to 100% capacity right off the rip, right? Mm-hmm. So there's got to be some way you can manage the droves of people that you suspect are coming in, whether that's, you know, the lanes and spots like the grocery stores have with the X's. You see that from some quick service establishments already. I would expect that to be the norm for a long time. So if you haven't put your tape down and you haven't got your measuring stick out, you might want to do that ASAP. You might want to think about different ways to open your doors, handleless door entries. You know, they make and I left a couple links in this playbook there where you can see the different options. You know, ones you could open with your elbow, with your foot, so on and so forth. Because again, every little one of these kind of changes is going to be a competitive advantage in my opinion, because you're feeding the bottom 2 rungs of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I think that's imperative in this time. You know, it talked about the clearly defined traffic patterns. This is a tough one. Do you have an emergency exit that you can repurpose as a regular exit now? Because you don't necessarily want your guests going out the same entrance that they came in, because then you're going to have an overlap of people and then you're going to have a breach in safety, right? So the distance is not going to be there. So these are things you all got to comb through. And every facility is so different, especially in the independent realm, that I don't want to sound tone deaf here, but the fact is you're going to take a look at your own facility and determine what you can do with it to make sure that you're providing the safety. And in some cases, it's probably not going to be a possibility. In some cases, it might be uncomfortable, but you got to take the lesser of 2 evils.
Yeah, I think the hand washing stations, the hand sanitizer around your restaurant, the constant, you know, cleaning of high traffic areas, I think that is going to be evident to your customers when they see, you know, the person coming back and they clean the front door handle twice during the time that they were sitting there eating. I think that's going to be important. Maybe it doesn't have a huge effect on cleanliness, like it's just one of many steps, and that they don't see things happening in the back of house that you're doing to keep things clean. But I think it kind of sends that message is that we really care about this, and this is a top priority, along with food prep and flavor profiles and customer service. You know, cleanliness is, you know, now on that list.
Yeah. You know, things you'd like to see is like UV lights at your HVAC vents. You know, I know that's maybe a pipe dream for some people because they're hard to find, but those measures and that reasonable care is going to be paramount. I love the idea of disposable wares, at least for the time being. You know, certainly environmentally conscious disposable plates and cups and things like that. I love the idea of throwaway menus, or even better, switching over to a digital menu and transaction format so the server doesn't have to cash you out in any capacity. You know, if you have the ability to somehow do e-commerce over the phone, customers feel great about that. I know my phone gets sanitized every day. I don't know about your menus. Sticky menus aren't going to be a thing, you know.
Touchless checkout is huge. I keep saying this around the office, and I'm going to get it trademarked. You know, clean is the new green. I mean, last year we were all talking about you're bringing your ceramic cup into Starbucks, and now they knock it out of your hand and give you a paper one. Like, now, this is such a dynamic shift in the customer's thinking that I don't know if we'll ever go back to that in the next 18 months.
I would argue. Go ahead, Dave.
No, I was just gonna put some fun into this. The way you pause to deliver that line, like, you should get that trademarked tonight, because by the time this thing hits, it's going to be gone.
Yeah, you can slide it right in the editing. It's good. It's good. But I would expect that to be a trend to last, quite honestly. I don't know that, especially all of us are going to be somewhat agoraphobic, you're scared of germs at the end of this. The days of you handing me the same pen that you've carried around your pocket and handed to 56 other people that within the hour, aren't going to fly anymore, in my opinion, or at least they're not going to be received very well. It's going to be a little tacky. So I would probably make the move permanently to digital payment.
I did curbside checkout last night, and I got my tacos. The woman handed me the pen to sign it. And I'm like, first, I'm not touching your clipboard. And I have a pen. I have a pen in my truck here. So I reached out the window and made this, look like I had a stroke signature. It was totally different in the sense that 2 months ago, she would have thought I was insane. Now she's like, oh, everyone's probably done this.
Yeah.
Still probably thought I was insane, but.
Well, I mean, most of us do anyway, but that's what we like about you, I think. That's where the genius comes from, right?
Yeah. Fine line.
That's it. So past that, redesigning your floor plan, and that kind of goes back to the traffic patterns we talked about. If the announcement comes out, you're at 25% capacity, you're going to do something with those extra tables and chairs. You might as well start thinking about it now and developing your contingency for what's going to happen and be ready for it. I mean, preparation is everything right now. Your floor plan's got to look a lot different, with staff distancing, guest distancing, not only for your dining room and your guests, but also what's your kitchen look like? And Dave, this kind of ties into the menu discussion, because if I have a full menu and my kitchen is designed for efficiency, inevitably I'm going to have a lot of overlap of staff. I'm only going to store this in one place because it's efficient. I'm only going to use one cooler. I'm only going to do this, or so on and so forth. If I limit my menu and I can partition the stations off to where you're only responsible for these 2 dishes and no overlap, then I can mitigate the amount of interaction or cross-contamination my staff has with each other. Not only that, but the shortening of the menu makes supply chain much easier. It makes my operation much more efficient. Even before the pandemic, I was screaming for shortened and abbreviated menus. And now I think it's such a great excuse for operators to do that. Keep your most profitable and your most popular items front and top of mind. And then eliminate your bottom movers that you don't need. Just because, again, you're talking from a path crossing standpoint, just eliminate it for the time being. And, those dishes can come back.
Yeah. And I think, something that I was having a conversation with somebody earlier this week, that a lot of what we're seeing now is stuff that probably would have been mainstays in maybe 3, 4, 5 years, but it kind of accelerated, mobile and, order entry, online ordering,
fascinating.
They were talking about virtual kitchens and all these people getting into these virtual kitchens and because of Uber and the deliveries. And now it's just taken all that stuff that we looked out years and said, okay, this is probably going to happen. And it went, bam, it's here. You know what I mean? So if you're technologically behind, or whether it's in social media or in ordering or all that stuff, there's, I hate to say it, but you're probably not going to survive this.
Call your POS company.
Gotta up your game. Yeah.
Call them right now and see what they have to offer you. Whether leased equipment or whether they're offering any specials, because a lot of times people are doing humanitarian things. You don't know what you don't know. Pick up the phone and dial it and see what they can do to get you integrated in the digital world as soon as possible. Be honest with you.
No question. Yep.
Absolutely.
You don't have to necessarily switch. Your current system may have a plug-in or a way to do it.
Most of
the
do.
other thing that I think we're going to see in the future here are kiosks too. You've seen that before with some of the big players, the Golden Arches, and
and we'll see soon enough. I mean, those companies that were quick to market with those kiosks. There's a big 3 to come to mind. Whether Taco Bell, Panera, and McDonald's. We'll see how they do in sales, because they all have been very, very emphatic about their promotion of the kiosks and the hospitality free zone, I guess is what you'd call it. But now all of a sudden it's relevant, right? I always thought that was for introverts. Now it's for everybody. So moving on past that is the self-service areas, guys. And that's a tough one that the quick service chains are going to have a problem with, because as we know, they trim labor by having customers get drinks on their own. And I think everybody thinks of buffets and they think the Golden Corrals and the Cracker Barrels are going to suffer. And that's true, because I think you're going to have to migrate over to a staff served model. I don't think you can have customers serve themselves anymore and share utensils. That's a thing of the past for at least the foreseeable future. I would argue a couple of years anyway before we're real comfortable with sharing a spoon with a stranger again, right? Or a sneeze, you know. But I would argue buffets can still be around. They'll be less popular, and then you just have to have a staff service model is what I would do. But if I get away from buffet, I certainly would. And then my soda machine with self-service. I mean, you got to put an attendant out there. You got to move your soda machine one way or another, but you can't let everybody have access to the sanitary, you know, principles that you're holding up. So those are the big ones about your facilities. And some of those are pretty seismic changes. Some are pretty expensive, but they're worth exploring nonetheless. Next topic we come down to is the policies. I'm not sure if you guys got a chance to look through this, but this first bullet point is probably my favorite one out of all of them. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the job description of someone, one of my middle managers, probably not my general manager or something like that, but a middle manager, arguably front of the house, is now going to become my safety and sanitation manager. And I'm going to put this person through serve safe ad nauseum. Any sanitation practice I can get them or training I can get them in, I'm going to have them develop a plan, and I'm going to have them implement and execute and monitor the plan moving forward. That's going to be a major responsibility of theirs, a primary responsibility even, is making sure that the practices that we're marketing and that we're advertising are going to be upheld. A couple of years ago would not have been a worthwhile investment, but now I think it's worth its weight in gold. Literally, to have someone walk around and just maintain the cleanliness of the organization and make sure everything's being done as you say it's being done, I think is going to be important.
What does it look like if one of your staff members gets sick? You know, that's the new normal. Is going to be frightening, and are you going to have to close? And we're going to do another whole episode on cleaning facilities and what that looks like. But how do you stop that? You know, as far as what do you do as far as a procedure? If someone gets sick, do you close down? How is the restaurant cleaned? Do you bring in a third party service to clean the restaurant? And then how do you reopen, and how do you notify the public that you did or didn't have someone sick, and then that you definitely clean the facility?
You're coming down to documentation, and what happens in the world of documentation, you know, from a legal precedent standpoint, is if you didn't document it, it didn't happen. Quite frankly, it's simply put. The health department is not going to be out in full force. They only have a limited number of people. They'll get to you eventually. Don't get me wrong. They will get to you. And they will implement changes and new policies and procedures. And again, they might not regulate it right at first, but how valuable is it that when they come to your facility or finally make it around to you, that you have logs and logs of data that you've kept about your reasonable care and about your passion behind the safety and sanitation of your establishment? I think it's going to pay in spades.
Oh, and I think the clear communication that one person is in charge of those policies and making sure that you didn't just train them, but that they're ongoing. Like, I think I agree with you. I think it's not actually something that I thought of, you know, but it makes complete sense. And I think it's worth the effort and manpower put against it, you know?
Yeah. And it's a matter of priority. Is there responsibilities you can give up for the time being that aren't necessary, that this would take precedent over? So you don't have to invest more in a person, because we know it's already expensive. You know, but again, what can we put off? What can we put on the back burner for a while, you know? But, you know, that being said, you know, patio season's around the corner, right? So that's definitely not something I would put on my back burner. I would definitely make sure my patio is up and running and that person be in charge of overseeing my patio, because I think that might be the first place to lift.
Even outdoor spaces, though, need to be cleaned. Yeah. You know, taking a second look at your furniture, how easy is it to wipe down? What chemicals are you using? I mean, talk to your broadline food distributor to see what chemicals they offer. You know, can you get the elevated hospital grade chemicals that you know have a greater strength of, you know, killing pathogens? What does it look like for your staff safety and your customer safety using those chemicals? So you want to make sure you got the right substance that you're using to clean that stuff. So moving forward, definitely take a look at your policies and procedures on cleaning. And I love Anthony's tip on having someone as a point person, that this is their responsibility.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd worry about the chemicals so much, because, you know, every lead dishwasher in the world right now is concocting their own anti-COVID mechanism out of degreaser, bleach, and delimer. And, you know, because what I know about my dish guys is they always had a homemade cleaner that worked better than the ones I could buy, right? And maybe you guys haven't seen this before, but I'm sure some restaurateurs are out there shaking their heads because it only takes one time to make hydrochloric gas out of the bleach and ammonia, and then they stop. But until they've mixed those two things, they're still concocting different chemicals that work better, supposedly, right? It's awesome.
Yeah, everyone's got Breaking Bad in the back of their kitchen with the.
Yeah, that's it, man. So, Brian, we talked about training a little bit, and that was one of the things. I love training, and those new policies and training thoroughly on those, I think, is imperative. I'm glad you brought it up. But how do you interact with guests? Let's expound upon that a little bit. How do you interact with guests from a distance? That's part of the training module, right? How are you taking orders? How are you running and bussing food, delivering plates? How do you do that and make people feel safe? And I don't know if I have the answer for that. It's almost like we'd have to role play, which we don't have the technology to do right now. But, it's something I'll be considering. Different cooking procedures, watching my staff and their glove use, especially because we know gloves get abused all the time. That's something I'll be cracking down on. Dishwashing procedures where applicable if you're not using disposals. I mean, certainly some manager intervention there to watch the processes, redevelop, and then, establish a plan is imperative. Receiving and checking in deliveries. Are your delivery drivers trained? What kind of assurance do you have as an operator that your delivery person is handling that sort of thing? Are they washing their hands appropriately? Are they doing it right from stop to stop? Those are major considerations. And
Anthony, I didn't even think of this. This is a great point that I'm kind of dovetailing into your point.
Sure.
The advantages of using a broadline distributor. So, if you have 7 distributors, you got your egg guy and your fish guy and you got everything else. Why not go with the broadline distributor, a local independent like Hillcrest or something like that?
Insert plug here.
Shameless plug. Thank you for our sponsor. Thank you for allowing us to do this.
I love it.
But seriously, if you have fewer vendors coming to, your kitchen, the likelihood of it being contaminated is less. So, you don't need 25 purveyors when you can get 99% of the stuff from one locally owned, independent, family owned broadline distributor. Like, it's nice.
Yeah, I feel like we just went back to like the first or second episode talking about
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, your broadliner where you can buy 2 feet of bass at your local broadliner.
I still
very common, very common.
For any of you super fans out there,
Chilean sea bass comes in by the inch, but regular bass is by the foot.
Well, it's a lot more rare, right? Anyway, Brian, this probably speaks to you a little more often. There's a lot of chatter about this. I know some places are doing it now on the West Coast and in Europe, especially. They're actually taking temperatures of guests and staff. And my tie into the delivery drivers there is, well, if you're doing that, are you taking the temperatures of your delivery drivers too? Or are you limiting it to, or expanding it to everybody who enters your premise? Maybe from a legal standpoint, you could talk about that for a second, because I think we're getting a little unconstitutional there if we're not careful.
We all have this balance between the customer's rights and the restaurant's owner's rights. But this is, you're hitting on a great point here. This is a conversation my wife and I, she's in the insurance business, had 2 nights ago. And what liability as a restaurant owner do you have if someone allegedly gets ill in your restaurant? Now, this isn't like, the national burrito place, getting people sick and them dying. This is a little bit different. This isn't because of the food. This is because someone else is sick in the restaurant. We haven't seen a lot of litigation in the past. I mean, if someone has a cold and they get that person sick, it's hard to trace it to, back to them. But with some of these apps that are out there and people with the health department trying to trace back the source of the infection, this may be an area of litigation. I don't know. So I'm just bringing it up as a potential issue. As of right now, I have not seen a lot of litigation about it.
Have you heard about new legislation that's rendering employers not liable for putting their employees in the line of fire?
Yeah, so there's a lot of legislation out there, and what you're talking about is tort reform. So that is preventing or limiting a cause of action that an employee or a customer would have against a company or an employer. So that is on the horizon. I think we'll definitely see that. we've seen it in years past with caps on damages and, you know, in the medical space on medical malpractice, there's caps and limitations on the statute of limitations and damages caps. So I think that will naturally progress into just general business with the COVID-19 and whether or not alleged injured party could get compensated.
So of all the hats an operator has to wear, you know, whether it be camp counselor, manager, owner, chef, whatever, now they got to be lawyer too. It's tough. That's a tough call. I hope they simplify it real soon, man, because on one hand, you have this business to run and you need employees to do it. And you're going to mandate someone who feels uncomfortable coming in to come in and do the work. That's tough.
Yeah. I think you'll see a shift of, you know, decisions being made on that issue. Because if the government doesn't, it's going to be a lot of pushback. The uncertainty due to the failure of the government to provide a reasonable game plan of when restaurants are going to open back up is causing a lot of frustration. All these other issues is compounding that.
Yeah, and it'd be worse down the road, I'm sure, once it comes to fruition. So let's hope we can avoid that. Anyway, so the temperature thing might be a big deal. And again, we talk about the torts and the liability. Reasonable care is everything, in my opinion, at least what I know from a legal standpoint. Would you agree with that or no?
That's typically the standard that people are held to, that you act like the ordinary reasonable person under the circumstances. And, you know, what is that though? You know, I could have told you 6 months ago what the ordinary reasonable person would do, but now is it something else? And these things evolve, and we'll find out with the new standards that are constantly going to be pushed out. But, you know, do what you feel is right, what is, you know, reasonable in your mind. And I think 99% of the time you'll be okay. But moving forward, there will be litigation. There will be, you know, disagreements as to what the best practices are.
It's fascinating in a world where we have to have everything pinpointed from a legal standpoint. You have these great big gray areas that are like, we don't know how to define it, but we know it if we see it, sort of thing, right? Like, and I think that's what we're going to fall prey to, unfortunately. But again, it comes down to reasonability, and you know if you're being reasonable or not. I think 9 out of 10 people can look at themselves and be like, yeah, that was reasonable, or no, that's not reasonable, right? I mean, it's not that complicated. So as far as policy is concerned, again, past the temperature thing, we're talking about limiting personal items allowed in your restaurant. You know, cell phones, especially, purses, bags, extra clothes. But even don't stop with staff. Maybe even consider that with guests. You know, post some flyers out there about, you know, guests shouldn't bring in unnecessary items. Phones obviously would contradict what we talked about with the payment system, so that may be out of the ordinary. But extra coats, extra bags, just unnecessary items. I would argue just keep as many contaminants out of the space, or potential contaminants out of the space, as possible.
Yeah, I feel that's going to be. I don't know. I feel like this is my turn to poo poo. Were these planted in here?
I've been dreaming of this.
You never have bad ideas, Anthony. Where are you giving those softballs? Like, what's happening?
Yeah, what is this? Yeah. So I'm not sure what list you glean this off of, but I would toss it. You know, staff. Okay, I get it. Like, you know, because phones can interrupt how they're working and different things like that. So some of the stuff with the staff, I could get on board with, but to limit it with a customer, like if you got, you know, a bag lady coming in with 4 cats and a grocery bag, and, you know, I mean, like, you know, you might have handled that pre-COVID differently, you know what I mean? But to now say, like, you know, you're not allowed to do certain things, like, you know, and you might have mentioned this earlier, you were talking about temperatures, but, you know, in China, they're actually temping customers. And if you've got a fever, they're turning you away. I don't see that happening here, but I don't see that happening here in the United States.
But it should. I think it should, though. I think it should. As you as a consumer, wouldn't you feel good about that?
I don't know, man. I don't know, because I show up with 3 of my friends, a party of 4, and one of my buddies has got, you know, so what's the regulation? Who's setting what temperature is allowed in and what isn't? So he runs a 99.5, you know what I mean? And they say, sorry, go home.
No, I think they put it out the reasonable fluctuation. I think it's like 100.5 is what I saw precedent set maybe in China you're talking about. Listen, I don't know that there's a right answer.
No, but who sets that though? The operator or the health department, or like, I mean, I don't know. Like,
no, Anthony, I think things that are being done, and this is again my opportunity to disagree with you again. I think things that are being done in a communist country are going to be completely different here. I mean, again, are we going to give up a bunch of civil liberties and rights because of COVID-19? Yes, because people are scared, and that's what happens in these types of situations. but I don't believe for a second that it's going to be like communist China. I think people are rioting now at Home Depot and Lowe's. Like, you think they're going to like put up for, you're not allowed to come in here for your margarita because you have 2 sweatshirts?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And
well,
I can't, I'm upset that you stepped all over my disagreement.
That was his time to shine.
But I agree.
We saw contrarian Dave for a second. You shot him down. Unbelievable. No, that's great. No, this is the kind of banner exactly, though, I think is indicative of what's going on in the country and just alludes to the uncertainty we're dealing with. Mm-hmm. Because I wouldn't mind seeing that. I would feel real good about that, quite honestly. And listen, if you get turned away, and this is just my opinion, please don't crucify me for this. I mean, you two can, but our listeners, I would feel great about that. And again, I'm sensitive. So when I walk in there and you're showing that level of reasonable care, awesome. Now, Dave, to your point, one of your friends gets turned away. It's kind of like, well, why you out with the fever, man? Like you obviously, if your fever is 100.5, you're not feeling well. You should probably be at home anyway, right?
I mean, yeah. There's a line there. I think, I mean, like I can agree that, do we all need to be responsible adults and in this environment, like know that, do we feel well? Should we be out in public? Like all of those things. But, I think that making a rule that potentially violates people's rights. I don't know. I mean,
does it violate rights though?
Well, it not even if it violates their rights.
You can refuse as a restaurant owner. I can refuse anybody from coming into my business, right? I can do that. Right?
As long as it's not the protected classes.
Correct.
Temperature is not a protected class. You're not touching.
I agree, but I'm just saying, like, we can do that regardless and refuse people, but it's not a way to do business. I feel like, I don't know. I'm still going to stick on my disagreement. I don't know.
No, I get it.
No, I disagree with Anthony and I agree with David, and I'm not trying to make a point of that.
I feel but no, you guys are teaming up on me. All right, so a couple other things we want to touch on before we wrap up here. We talked about the contactless payment methods. I think we're all in agreements on those. Mm-hmm. The quicker you can get an Apple Pay, Google Pay, Samsung Pay, whatever it is, even through your POS, do it. Order ahead capabilities. I like this notion a lot, where you can order ahead in your reservation system or on a separate app. And you can go sit in a restaurant with very little interaction. Sit down, your drink's already being delivered to your table. Your food order's already placed. The minute you sit down, it starts the clock. They start producing it, bring it out. Less interaction, less talking, less engaging. How do you guys feel about that?
I think all that technology is amazing. And I think people got to get on board with that. I love it.
I think so, but I think there's a drawback in that because you're not going to be able to interact with the server. If the server has a face mask on, you're going to be able to tell she's smiling, or you're going to be able to tell she's angry. That social human interaction, when we talk about Anthony's needs chart, like, I think that's going to be missing.
Maslow's. I wish it was mine, but it's Maslow's.
the Hamilton needs chart? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. It's no longer the hierarchy of needs. It's Hamilton's needs chart.
Yeah,
I like it.
I like it. But if you could make it the Hamilton's needs charts for restaurant patrons. Like, there you go. You just put a spin on it. I'll copyright that with "clean is the new green."
Yeah, I love it. Please get on that.
We'll get some T-shirts made all as well, right? And then they were talking.
And another thing, like I guess, and I wanted to say this when you were talking, Brian, and I didn't want to interrupt, was you mentioned that are you going to be able to have the interaction with the server and all that? I think we're talking about a 12 to 18 month window from now where this is going to be highly sensitive. But then once there's a vaccine, once there's, antibody testing, once there's all these other things, once it's traveled through the population enough to where, this is kind of behind us a little bit. Like, this is not the imminent future. This is like the next 12 to 18 months. So if some of those things, I think people are going to be reasonable to, like, the face masks and the gloves and maybe the temperature taking. Maybe I'm too aggressive on that. Maybe that won't be as like personally invasive as I believe it could be. You know what I mean? But these things, like, again, we got to get through till we have a vaccine, basically, and people feel good about this being a normal part of the flu season.
It's going to change from people wearing face masks in public, people wearing face masks around the office and in restaurants. No longer shaking hands. I had a meeting today here at the office. We didn't shake hands. I think that's a dynamic shift that
it's so
I definitely would have done.
Yeah,
it's so strange. Like,
it's icky.
We're a family here, and I'm used to, like, seeing people and giving a hug or a handshake or high five. It's like it sucks, man. It's like it's
no. And we have members of our team that are working from home because the risk factors. And
Sure.
I think that's important that they do that. But I miss them. I miss them being around the office, and my heart breaks a little bit for not having that interaction with them.
For sure.
I'll be around soon, man. I'll be around soon, Brian.
All right, good. I'm looking forward to it.
I promise you, man. I promise you. And then the last things we were talking about, I want to talk about, was your reservation system again, and being sure that you're on top of your reservation system. That way you don't have to disappoint customers, right? So when you know what your capacity limit is, you've redone your floor plan, you've done your traffic patterns, you got your plan laid out. What's your reservation strategy look like? And there's a couple of thoughts on that. You don't want to overpopulate your reservation system, because then you got to turn people away. But then the second side is, how can you maximize reservations to maximize profits? Because if you're only operating at 25 or 50% capacity, certainly your bottom line is going to take a hit. I do believe there is a way you can operate within that structure and still be profitable, depending on what your fixed expenses are. But it's imperative that you're on top of that reservation system and making sure that it's only taking the reservations that you can. And also, again, on the back end of that, making sure, Dave, to your limited menu comment, can we turn tables faster? If we can only have 50% of the people in, can we turn them over twice as often? Can we eliminate some appetizers or repackage meals so they're faster, or that call ahead ordering to mitigate the first 15 minutes of their dining experience? Can we do those things to kind of supplement the income on the back end? And that's something I would be looking into through my reservation system immediately.
Yeah, and I think there's reality to that, because I think people are not going to linger in restaurants and sit around during happy hour and have drinks and spend 3 hours. Like, I don't know. I think that's going to be like, again, until we find, a way to ease people's minds with the vaccines or whatever is going to happen. Like, I think that's a reality, that you're going to be able to do that if you do it right.
I think they will on patios, but inside the restaurant, I think that's going to be hit or miss.
Mm-hmm.
This is all amazing stuff. I mean, I think reviewing your business plan, making sure that your financial model works is very important. But like I said earlier, getting back in the game, if you're closed, and getting reps and getting your people trained up, and trying to maximize the forgiveness of the PPP money, those are all things that you need to start now and really get back into it. And people want to see your restaurant open. They want to see you be successful, and tell your story. Tell people what you're doing. Let people know, because I think the more you can talk about your experience, the more people can relate to you and understand how you're doing.
Yeah. Last but not least, I got two things real quick. Get your local regulatory authority or your health inspector on the phone and see if you can set up the day where they can walk through your establishment with you and help you set the plan. I just got an email while we were talking from my local regulatory authority, and they have a playbook too. And so I would be calling them, and I would have them come in and walk the property with me, figure things out. And I would do it, according to their guidelines, because they're receiving the highest training of anybody right now. And then lastly, don't ever forget that love and empathy and gratitude and patience are still your most profound tools that you have in your toolbox. I find that when you act based on those 4 attributes, it's harder to be wrong in any decision, in any situation, as I'm sure you guys will agree.
Yeah. Appreciate you for listening today. Again, if you got any feedback or any comments or anything to add to the conversation, we love all the things we get on restauranttopia.com. Get on there, reach out to us. Listen, follow us on social media. We've got some great content going out on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. Get on there. All those handles are Restauranttopia on all 3 of those platforms. And we will see you guys next time. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.
This is a high quality pod.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care.
Adios.
Thank you for listening to Restauranttopia. The gratitude that we have for each and every one of you spending your precious time to listen to this podcast is immeasurable. Please make sure to tell a friend about this podcast. And also, if you have any feedback for us, visit us on restauranttopia.com and drop us a line. You can also subscribe on your favorite place to listen to podcasts. Thank you, and have a great day.
Father-in-law.
Okay, it's recording. Listen, it's recording. I don't know where it's going. I don't know what the cloud is.
We're there.
Now, can you retrieve this? What cloud is this going to? I'm being serious.
It's going to the Zoom cloud.
Okay, so you're okay, because I don't want to mess anything up. I don't want to have this unbelievable, engaging conversation and then nobody can enjoy it. All right. Okay, guys, welcome to West to Watopia. Wow. Woo! Here we go.
That was a good start.
Here we go.
Coming in hot.